Everybody, thanks for tuning in. The NFL Scouting Combine starts up next week, so there will be a lot of talk about the draft, but it seems like not too many people are talking about free agency, and that's where I want to hit on this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe, hit the like button, leave some comments, questions, and I'll try to answer them in the comment section below. So, with 49ers free agency, we've talked a lot about who their scheduled free agents are. Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, Charvarius Ward, Aaron Banks, and the NFL window for designating franchise or transition players that opened this week on Tuesday that runs through March 4th. As I see it, really no candidate for the 49ers to franchise. Obviously, I think a lot of people would say who's their top priority to re-sign. It would be Dre Greenlaw, I would imagine. But yet, at the linebacker position, keeping Greenlaw around on a 1 year franchise tag number, that's $27 million. And that's $27 million that counts immediately against the cap. So if the 49ers were willing to pay Dre Greenlaw $27 million for one season, quite clearly they'd be able to get a long-term contract done with him that could spread that money out over several years. So I don't see the franchise tag being a real option for any of those players. So let's talk about some of the, I don't want to say lower tier, but certainly not the top guys that we've talked about so much from the middle of the season on about, who is scheduled for free agency. One guy I'd like to talk about, and it's our only restricted free agent, is Jordan Mason. And he started the season as the 49ers lead running back with Christian McCaffrey out, had a really good season, did a lot of very good things. However, I just have some questions about where he fits in with the 49ers for this coming season. Jordan Mason is a player that the 49ers signed as an undrafted rookie 3 seasons ago. And he finished the final year of his contract this year making $853,000. Now, because he was undrafted rookies signed 3 year deals, drafted rookies signed 4 year deals. So he doesn't have the 4 years of accrued seasons to become an unrestricted free agent. Therefore, the 49ers still have some control over him. However, with the restricted free agent market, how it works is that teams can tender a restricted free agent at one of three levels, and those levels are pretty much locked in, and it relates to the level of compensation the team would receive if that player ended up negotiating and signing an offer sheet with another team. So let's just say if you're a restricted free agent and the team puts a first round tender on you, that would mean a $7.2 million salary for the coming season. And if another team signed that player to a long term extension or a long term contract, the compensation that team would have to give up to, say, the 49ers would be a first round pick. A second round compensation is 5.2 million. So I think we can rule out that the 49ers would not pay Jordan Mason 7.2 million for this year or 5 million for 2025. Here's the question though. The third level is a right of first refusal. So all that does is means that if the 49ers were to present a tender of $3.1 million, 3.185, that those numbers are coming from overthecap.com. If the 49ers were to present Jordan Mason with a tender of $3.185 million and another team decides to go after Jordan Mason and they sign him to an extent or to a contract, a multi-year contract, the 49ers would have the ability to say, no, we'll take that contract. We'll pay him what you are going to pay him. That means that's the right of first refusal. But my question is, will the 49ers tender Jordan Mason? Because it would mean paying a backup running back $3.185 million when you already have Isaac Guerendo on the team, when this is seen as a very good running back draft, and you could bring back Elijah Mitchell at a price far less than 3.1 million. So I don't know the answer to that. That's one of the questions I will be asking John Lynch next week about Jordan Mason and how he fits in with the team. Last year, the 49ers did put that tender on Juwan Jennings, and then they later signed him to a 2-year deal, and that turned out pretty well. Juwan Jennings heading into the final year of his contract. So he would be somebody that the 49ers could look to extend 1 year out as well. Okay, so let's talk about some of the other free agents and where the 49ers might prioritize what they do. I already mentioned Elijah Mitchell. I do think that there is a case to be made for bringing back either Isaac Yiadom, cornerback, or Rock Yassin. I think those guys, they didn't cost a whole lot of money on 1-year contracts. And you do need kind of placeholders or insurance policies of that nature at that position, especially when you think of the 49ers cornerback situation where I think their starters are, fine with Diamador Lenore and Renardo Green. They also have Darrell Luter on the team and Chase Lucas, who spent most of the season on the practice squad. But I would think that they would want to bring in a veteran second tier free agent at the cornerback position. I know there's been a lot of talk about DJ Reed. And yes, I know 49er fans are like, upset with me because I've said that it's kind of a long shot that they would go after a high price free agent. And specifically, I've been asked a lot about Max Crosby or Trey Hendrickson or Joey Bosa or trading for Myles Garrett as well. I just think when you have so many high priced players up and down your roster, with Brock Purdy going to be signing a contract that'll make him the highest paid player on the team, you already have Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Trent Williams, Brandon Ayuk, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Diamador Lenore. I mean, those are a lot of high priced guys on the team, and I just don't know that they can bring in another high priced guy. Um, I would think that this offseason will be very much about finding specific guys who fill roles on the team, areas of need, and then using 10 draft picks or whatever they end up using to strengthen the roster in other areas. Perhaps getting a starter or two in the draft, but certainly getting rotational defensive linemen, backup defensive backs, guys who are going to see the field, some core special teams players. I would think that that would be what this offseason is about, while also keeping their fingers crossed that the guys they've already paid big money to are back and playing at a high level, such as Christian McCaffrey, who missed most of last season with the injury. But when he came back, that game against Buffalo, it looked like he was running in the form that he showed in 2023. So a lot hinges on that. And, that's part of why, to me, that there is a question about what the 49ers do with Jordan Mason in this coming season because of McCaffrey and Isaac Garindo and the ability to add a couple other running backs, maybe bring back Patrick Taylor for special teams and also being like the third or fourth running back as well. Okay, so those are some of the guys at cornerback. Two guys on the offensive line that I think are going to be interesting to watch. One is Jalen Moore. Did very well, I thought, as the swing offensive tackle, the guy who can play either spot if there's an injury. He's a good insurance policy to have. And also remember now that Jalen Moore will have a new home before the 49ers draft because it's basically 6 weeks from the start of free agency to the NFL draft. So the 49ers probably have to get their insurance policy, if you will, at offensive tackle heading into the draft. And then if you stack a draft pick on top of a veteran who you already have, you're still a better team for it. So Jalen Moore is going to be interesting because I thought that he played pretty well when Trent Williams went out. middle of the season or three-quarters of the way through the season. And then Jalen Moore got injured, and then all hell broke loose for the 49ers as far as trying to grab guys off practice squads and putting them in the starting lineup 3 days later. So Jalen Moore is going to be interesting to see what kind of contract he's able to get around the league, and if the 49ers are able to bring him back. Another offensive lineman is Ben Barch. There was a point where when Aaron Banks was out for a couple weeks, where Ben Barch stepped in and I thought played pretty well. And I thought it is certainly not out of the realm of possibility that Ben Barch could be in the starting lineup in 2025. He is a free agent, unrestricted free agent. So those are two guys immediately to kind of keep an eye on to see what the 49ers are thinking there. On the 49ers Talk podcast, Jennifer brought up Eric Saubert, backup tight end, um, a guy who probably fits pretty well, run a blocking specialist, not a real threat as a pass receiver. And that's part of the reason why in my latest mock draft, I had the 49ers taking Tyler Warren at number 11 overall, but Eric Saubert's someone to keep an eye on. As far as the defensive line, Kevin Givens has been around for a while. Again, kind of an insurance policy, bring him back. He can fit into an 8-man rotation. And then if you're able to stack a couple of defensive linemen during the draft on top of what they already have, you've made your depth better at that spot. So those are some of the guys that warrant taking a look at in free agency. A couple, the backup quarterback is a spot where the 49ers are going to have to address. I kind of doubt, just the way things shook out last season, that Joshua Dobbs will be back. But what about Brandon Allen? They brought him back 2 years now in a row, or they signed him in 2022, re-signed him or the other way around, signed him in 2023, had him in 2024, bringing him back on a 1-year deal. He was the backup quarterback for most of the season. And when they needed a starter in Green Bay, he was the guy. Then when they needed another one last week of the season, they went with Joshua Dobbs. So let's see what they do there and how much spending money on Brock Purdy impacts the kind of backup quarterback the 49ers will have. One note, it was widely reported, and the team now said Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, who's been a backup linebacker and also a special teams contributor, 49ers released him on Tuesday. It's more of a procedural move because he was already scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent. So it has no impact whatsoever on, I got a question, does this mean they're clearing space for Dre Greenlaw? Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles was scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent anyway. And so now they had to release him because in the NFL, late in the season, he had what was deemed a minor injury, a minor calf injury that would not have required him to go on injured reserve, but they wanted the roster spot late in the season. So they put Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles on injured reserve. Well, the rule is once a player is cleared, that the team must release him. And so therefore, even though it's the off season and he was going to be a free agent anyway, it was kind of a procedural move where the 49ers released Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles. They can still re-sign him. It would have to be, I think, after the start of the new league year. But obviously, because they released him, he wouldn't count against the compensatory formula. So really one of those nothing to see here moves. Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent when the open negotiating period begins on March 10th. Now it's just that he's a free agent. Before that, 49ers can still re-sign him. Okay, so those are some of my thoughts on free agency and where the 49ers are heading into the NFL Scouting Combine next week. Once again, thanks for watching this video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment and a like, and that is it for now.